Dr. Mekel here. So thrilled to join you for another Instagram Live. It is so doggone hard for me to believe that I have been doing this every single Friday for the entire year of 2021, right? It's crazy. Well, I just want to thank you all for taking some time to join me on a Friday. I love doing these lives because it really is an opportunity for me to connect heart to heart with people in the grief and loss space. Every single Friday, I have a chance to connect with someone who I have found on Instagram and really just talk about their grief and loss journey, the things that are keeping them tethered to themselves and connected to others in the world, and to shine a light on hope, right? The possibility of hope. So if you're new to my page, I want to quickly introduce myself. Then I want to join with the folks on today for the live. So I'm Dr. Mekel. I'm a licensed psychologist who specializes in grief and loss. And I have been focused in this particular area since 2012. That's the year that my mom died of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So throughout the almost past 9 years, I have experienced all the ebbs and flows that you can possibly think of within this grief journey, and have also experienced some subsequent losses, including my dad in March 2020. So on this page, I have 3 primary aims. Number 1, I want to provide tons of education about grief and loss. Why? Because our society is sort of limited in its understanding, and we all need to be elevating that conversation. Secondly, I want to inspire you. Right? I want to inspire you to know that, yes, grief is difficult. Yes, it's a lifelong marathon. At the same time, there is hope that can be found amidst the journey. And then finally, I want to empower you. And I want to do that through some offerings that I have to just equip you with tools and practices and strategies necessary to get through the day-to-day grind of grief. So, again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining in. So today I have 2 lovely sisters. They're from the United Kingdom. Their names are Tanya and Tara, and they are on an Instagram page called Grief Probate Journey. Grief_probate_journey. So I'm going to invite them in so they can share more about who they are. But man, this is going to be a great conversation, right? You can already tell by the name of their page that grief is so much more than just emotions. It's the practical things that happen after someone dies. So let me get them on. I see them in the room, and then we will start the conversation. So excited to have them here. Tanya and Tara. Hi. How are you?
We're not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Doing so well. For whatever reason, your camera is turned.
Yeah.
There's a way to turn it. There we go.
There we go. Oops.
Yes, I love this. Thank y'all so much for carving out some time all the way around the world to fit in.
That's cool. We appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I, first of all, what's going on in the UK? Let's start there, right? I'm fascinated with my international friends. So how are things in the UK?
Well, at the moment with the pandemic, it's like, I'm not really sure, because the way that I deal with it is like I just take in as much as I can, and I don't take on too much. So like, there's the vaccinations, if you're vaccinated, if you haven't been, so that affects travel and it's affecting people's jobs. So there's some people like healthcare workers, if they're not prepared to do the vaccine, they could lose their jobs. So people are being pressured in that way. So that's the big thing at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar to you with this. I was just reading an article about some of the required, like the mandated vaccinations.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, just as the economy is sort of on an upswing here, then we're going to be experiencing some layoffs, and it's just going to be so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And so like with the, as I said, I just take in as much as I can, because if I watch it every day, that just adds to everything else that's going on. So I have to do everything in moderation to be able to get by.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So I love that right off the bat, because I think that sometimes we sort of forget that we can manage ourselves, right? We can turn down the volume of things around us and take it in small doses so that we can actually care for ourselves. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I was sharing with everybody that y'all's Instagram handle is Grief Probate Journey. And I gotta tell you, I'm excited about this conversation for so many reasons. Partly because I think that this is one aspect of the grieving process that people may not necessarily think about. So if y'all will take a couple minutes and just introduce yourselves again and share kind of what led you to create this page on Instagram. I'd love that.
Okay, so I'm Tara.
And I'm Tanya.
Oh, Tanya, I apologize. I was saying Tanya. Okay, Tanya. Tanya. Got it.
Tanya. Yeah, it's either. My mum said Tanya. Tanya. My dad said Tanya. So it's either.
It's either. Yeah. So for us, like doing this blog, it wasn't ever really a plan. It just sort of happened because of the journey that we went on. So our dad, he was hospitalized in September 2016, and he was diagnosed with a rare heart condition called infective endocarditis, which we had never heard of before. And, you know, because of the bacteria going into his eyes, sadly he lost his sight, and there were many other things going on in the hospital, like due to lack of physiotherapy, he became bedbound. And then because of the initial diagnosis of the infective endocarditis, he got a lot of other infections such as delirium, that he'd suffer from a delirium quite a lot. So for us, this is where the start of needing to prepare things started from, because he had a social worker in the hospital and they advised us that we need to apply for power of attorney while our dad is in a sound state of mind. So it started from the hospital. And when they said that to us, we were like, oh, what is this? You know, we didn't have a clue. We're just having a meeting about our dad's care, and then they're telling us that this is what we need to do. So the way that power of attorney works, there's either for just the healthcare, or it can be for financial, or for both. And also it doesn't have to be permanent. It can be for a temporary state. So for example, say if someone isn't in the right state of mind for only a period of time, if that goes, then they can, you know, you can cease the power of attorney. So our dad agreed to one that wasn't going to be always. So he agreed to that. But with power of attorney,
just to clarify here, I want to make sure people understand. I think most people have heard of power of attorney, and I am definitely not an attorney, but I do want to give a little bit of a definition here. So if someone is incapacitated in some way in this situation as a result of a health condition, the family member or designated person, doesn't have to be a family member, but another person can be designated as sort of the person who can exercise power with regard to decision making about healthcare and financial aspects. So just to clarify. That's what it is.
And I think so how we first started it really was that there were so many things that we were coming at us, and things that we just didn't know about, even just things like medical terms and all that sort of thing. And so we sorry.
Okay.
Just adjusting. So we got to a point where we were like, what is all of this? We don't understand it. We're trying to find information on it and things like that. And just with everything, with the care of our dad, how things went, which wasn't really great, we just felt like we don't want this sort of thing happening to anyone else. Or we want people to be able to have more information than we had when we were going through it. So it was a bit of that sort of thing where we decided we want to put it out there.
And how amazing for you all. So the reason I was sort of drawn to y'all's page is because I have been in this situation. And even following the death of my dad in March 2020, our family is continuing to wrestle through some aspects of his estate. And it is quite a mountain, right? And on days it feels completely insurmountable. But I think, again, this is one area that people don't really think about. And so I really love the fact that even in the midst of y'all caring for your dad and just wanting to be there for him emotionally and physically, that you were also, the social worker planted this seed on the importance of getting all these affairs in order so that it would be not easy, but easier on the back end.
Yeah. And the thing is, we just didn't have a clue. We didn't have a clue what this was going to involve. Yeah. And also the thing is, it's a different process depending on your situation. So for us, our mum and dad were divorced, and then also our age, that also had played a part in it, and our dad's will wasn't signed. So that was another thing. We had all of these things going on. So, you know, that in itself made our situation a lot different. So also with power of attorney, if it gets granted and the person passes away, power of attorney is void. So for us, unfortunately, our dad agreed to it. We sent off the paperwork, but he sadly passed away before it got granted. Yes. So it got granted, and then it was void. So then that takes you onto something else, and then that's where, you know, you have to apply for a grant of probate to become an executive administrator of the estate. So
goodness. Tanya, Tara, I'm sitting here, my mind is like honestly overwhelmed, because this is literally where my own family is. And I will say this, the process of probate is, I wish I could scream.
It is something else.
It's insane. Especially like in the midst of everything going on with COVID and all with the legal system, it is absolutely insane. So, man,
this is the thing we were going to try and do, because we've done a topic on inheritance tax and on probate and on power of attorney, but we know that things change. So this year or last year, you know, because with the pandemic, I get so confused.
I know.
But we planned on doing an updated version, but because of the pandemic, literally it was changing week by week, day by day. So it became like, this is pointless to try and do this now. But we are hoping that things are a little bit more settled. So next year we're going to do updated, because, you know, the pandemic has changed things. It's changed the way that you have to do things.
Right.
So things that were in place and how we had to do it, it might not necessarily be the same. So that's why we want to do an updated version of it. But the thing is as well with probate, it's like, even though we knew how it made us feel, it just feels like it takes over your entire life. There's nothing else but probate. But I didn't realize how much it affected me. And I was watching this drama series on TV, and someone had passed away, and so a family member had come in to deal with probate. And as soon as the word probate was mentioned, something happened inside me, and I was like, what's going on? And every single time probate was mentioned, it's like I was getting slapped in the face or something. And so in the end, I just started writing how I felt, and then the feeling started going away, and then that's where that came from. So as my sister said, it's like throughout this whole process, it's just we felt angry, we felt let down. You know, you feel like you don't know who you can trust. Your expectations are never managed. And also, like, this is not our everyday. And the people that we're having to deal with, like solicitors, and they speak to you in their terms as if we know what they're talking about. Right. So this is, you know, on a daily basis, we had to be telling them this is not our everyday.
Right.
You know, please can you break that down in a way that we can understand?
Yeah.
So these were all of the reasons we were like, you know, on top of having lost someone, you're having to deal with these things and get spoken to in these ways. It's just not okay. So these were the things that made us want to do this.
I am so grateful, because I know that you're not alone. I'm not alone in this. One of the things I want to sort of back up to is the importance of planning. And this is always a conversation that, of course, hindsight's 2020. But one of the things I'm really passionate about, I don't know, who knows where the wind's going to blow with this, but I am so passionate about planning. And I'll be honest, if I just disclose here, when my dad died, my dad was an accountant and a financial advisor. So he was very organized with his stuff and everything in order. At the same time, he didn't quite cross all the T's and dot all the I's.
Right.
And those have been the areas that have been a nightmare. And I'll be honest, part of that working through the grief of his death, related to his death, was anger at him. For not finalizing these things. Because it created a mountain of stuff for my family. And so I don't know if that was your experience, but if you would sort of talk to the challenges related to the person who passed and planning, because I think this is important.
In time before, just, I mean, one thing which is on us, I think there was a part of anger in myself because, or both of us, because our dad used to say to us, look at my will's in there, you guys look at it,
he used
to say to us to look at it. I don't want to know about that. But we're not thinking about, don't want to think about that sort of thing. So in hindsight, as we say, if we had looked at it, we would have seen that wasn't signed and things weren't as they should be. I mean, we thought maybe there's something somewhere else, but as we were going through all of these things, we didn't find anything. So it was, and you're saying like with your dad, our dad was a really organized person as well, so it was a kind of a sort of a shock to know. It's like
what were they thinking? What were they thinking?
But then also with my dad's will, there were a lot of mistakes. So we managed to locate where he had where it had come from, because we thought, maybe they've got a copy of a signed one and we just can't see it. But unfortunately there wasn't. But when they looked at it, they themselves said, we understand why he wouldn't have signed this, because there are a lot of errors in it. So that's probably maybe something to do with it. And then because my sister and I weren't engaging enough with him about it, because our dad, he was from Barbados and he had accounts there, and he was trying to put us onto the accounts when we went over there. So these were the sorts of things that he was trying to do. But that's another thing that we would say, if there are accounts overseas, the trouble that we had. That was that takes it to a whole another level. Our probate process took over 2 years, and they never, our expectations were never managed, to the point that it's like we just felt like we're making complaints all the time, and that's not what we're about. But if we're not managing our expectations and we're paying you for a service, then this is what we're going to have to do to get something done.
So I don't think that I want to stop here, because I don't think that people realize with their will. So ever since when my mom died in 2012, like, my mom was a nurse and she was very open about talking about her death, just related to her profession. And our experience, my brother and I's experience with her was she literally had notes for each of us in her safe deposit box.
Oh, wow.
She was. For my brother, and it was so clear, and in my mind I thought, this is how this goes when somebody dies, because it was so seamless, and it was almost like we didn't really have to make any decisions because she did all that. When my dad recently died, there were some things that were known and clear, but a lot of it has been a nightmare. And one of the things that I don't think people realize is to secure the original copy of your will, to make sure that it is someplace that somebody knows, not just you, because that in and of itself can be a nightmare.
So for us as well, because of everything that has happened, that's why we would say we would encourage people to talk to their loved ones about these things now, to find out now. Obviously it's easier said than done, because we didn't. But in the long run, if you do what we've gone through and what we've experienced, that is what we would advise everybody, because it's like it's a whole new world. It's just a whole new world. And then we learned things that we weren't aware of, that you can do living wills. So for example, you can do a will and you can say that, if you become of not sound of mind, this is what you want, and it's legally binding. So that has to, whatever you request has to be done. And we wish that we had known about these things before, because those are things that make such a difference when you're in a situation like, in hospital, like our dad was.
Yeah, definitely.
Someone, so you just so y'all know, someone saying like prayer hands, like yes, somebody saying like it's resonating, and I think that people forget that you can do those living wills. So I kind of wanted to do a little bit of education here about that. I don't know if this is the case in the UK, but there is an organization, I think it's called freewill.org. Okay. And it is literally an organization where you can, for free, right, have access to all the documents, like advance directives, which means if something happens to you, people know that you want a do not resuscitate order, how to handle your care, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, which is different than just general power of attorney. Then if you own a business, I didn't know this, like what happens, I work as a consultant and psychologist in practice. So what happens to your business if you die? You can have a power of attorney for your business.
Okay.
So the will. So please check out these free resources. It literally walks you through every single possible scenario in advance while you're living in a sound
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to know about, and because I didn't really know about that myself.
I
No, not the business one, no. Because the ones that we found here, it's not as detailed as that, I don't think.
Okay, yeah. So if someone's on the internet real quick, if you want to fact check that, I think it's freewill.org. It may be calm, but I think it's freewill.org. Just check it out. If anything, it sort of lays the foundation for you and gives you a roadmap of things to consider, whether you use that or that platform or not. So just to sort of think about. Someone is saying getting your final affairs is a must, including your power of attorney and health proxy. Absolutely. Or someone saying, yes, it was important. And then in your will, you can say whoever will inherit the business. Okay, it's freewill.com. So my friend Greg is on there. Thank you, Greg. I think I know Greg. You know Greg. Yes. Okay, so freewill.com. So, after my dad died, I had a will before he died, but I hadn't really thought through all these other elements. But I'm telling you, probate lights a fire under your buns. And my brothers and I have done so much work to make sure everything's tight, everything's clear, there's no issue, so that they don't have to deal with, or I don't have to deal with that when they die, because it is really a nightmare to have stuff out of it.
It is.
And another thing that I think, because of everything that happened in our situation with our dad, it's like now the way that we speak about things, sometimes it's like we're so far detached from the fact that we've lost our dad, but it's because of all of these things. Now we think differently. It's like, you have to do this for this, but you're not actually thinking about the loss. As an example, because with our dad, we had to do post-mortem or an autopsy, and so we had to make that decision. But because we're making a complaint against the hospital that our dad was an inpatient, so for us it was like, if we do this, then if something happens later down, then we've got that. We've got that. So we're not I think as well, one of the reasons why we agreed to do this is because our dad was like, once you're gone, you're gone. You're not in that body anymore. So that helped us to make that decision. But like, just for example, with the coffin as well, we didn't know this, but it's one that would last a long time. And, your mind is thinking about things like that rather than the funeral. So it warped. It's like we had a warped sense of how we were doing things because of our situation. So
let's talk about that, because I think that grief in and of itself, as y'all know, is so complicated and messy. But when you couple the legal aspects, I agree with you. It makes it very difficult to have room to actually process the loss, because everything is business. How have y'all sort of created space to grieve your father's death in the midst of all of these legal affairs?
Well, for me, if I'd be honest, I think that just with everything, the way, like so I said, we've kind of detached a little bit, which is not the best way to be. And we know 100% that's not the best way to be. But
it makes sense under the circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like, so for us, my dad, he was in hospital for 7 months. And at that, I was working at that time. And so I was going there every day. So I'd go before work, go to work, after work, weekends. And it felt like we were on a hamster wheel with everything that was going on. And then when he passed away, it's like we got thrown off of it. But then the very next day,
you're into the business
because of things that happened. It's like we've put back on it straight away again. It's like it's just been everything has been like that. So we haven't really had a chance to, because then it's funeral, and then we're dealing with coroners, and we're dealing with the funeral home, and then we're having to do the death certificate, and then all of these things, and it's just been spiraling, and it's just been constant ever since. But as I said, like the blog, it wasn't ever a plan, but the more that this went on, the more we just had this feeling that we need to do something. And I think that stems from our dad, because he was a person that, he worked on many committees and